Howdy, Joe here. Pleasure to see ya. And gee, remember where the camera is sometimes, eh? Um, what sparks this is Gandalf was on Colbert last night, and I'm more than a bit of a Tolkien nerd. Actually, I'm a little person who's Hobbitish with a dash of leprechaun. Um, in other words, there may be variations on variations in people. Anyways, um, Ian McKlellan, um, of course, a communicator, actor par excellence. Um, of course, uh, I admire your work and brilliance and gaiety. Gee, clap if you love fairies. Um, yeah, and this one grew up there too, kind of thing. Um, although I've not been to see Peter Pan. Uh, and I don't recall as early as 3 years old. Um, that's remarkable. Um, my memory, a memory kicks in at 4, um, of me in front of the TV parked for Howdy Doody, 4 years old. Um, and the parents in the kitchen are knocking off a load of whiskey, and the fight's getting louder. Um, yeah, there's all sorts of shows, aren't there? Um, I found this backdrop just recently, a week or two ago, thought I'd share. You both might like because it's the A starfield of Middle Earth, and this is the oh, wait, wait, there we go. Just to get me out of the picture, this is the Tasman Valley in New Zealand. Even though Tasman reminds of Tasmania, which is a whole different place, um, of a different, whole different beauty. They share the sky, and I don't know most of it. I actually have a Socratic sense of modesty uh, regarding with knowledge. Um, so I don't know most of this, but I do know some. And to the upper right, those two clouds are our nearest galactic neighbors of a sort. They're dwarf galaxies or remnants, um, and they may be in a trajectory to merge with the Milky Way. Um, anyways, the Melagenic clouds, named for the Magellan, who was the first to circumnavigate the globe. Thing is he didn't quite succeed. He was killed in the Philippines on his journey, and his crew completed his journey back to. Gee, the amount I don't know is immense. Anyways, Magellan, the southern hemisphere. Um, so that's up on that side, and over. Geez, knowing camera angles. There we go. Right there, upside down is Sirius. And that's a nifty constellation. And Orion's belt is 3 stars in a row. And it in the northern hemisphere, it dominates the winter sky, and um, right beside it, the belt points to Sirius. There, that bright star. That's the brightest star in the sky, and it goes behind the sun from April to August, and so it's only visible for part of the year. Uh, thing is that Sirius and gosh, the right shoulder of Orion. Okay, those two, and then down here, that one's Procyon. Um, the dog stars. Okay, characters, projections, storytelling. Um, the hunter, and his dogs. And the big dog is Sirius, and the small dog is Procyon. Ah, Orion's belt hangs the sword. But in the southern hemisphere, it's upside down. And in the northern hemisphere, at Fairy View, Orion may appear to be very well hung. Fairies can be a bit cockeyed, eh? Gosh. Um, but, or in addition, is that the two dogs and the shoulder of Sirius, which is Beetlejuice, which is soon to maybe turn into an event. Um, anyway, those three stars form what is called in the northern hemisphere the winter triangle. And I don't know what they call it in the southern hemisphere. Um, maybe the Orion. It's almost an equilateral, although the curve of sky from different angles alters the triangle angles a bit. Well, I'm not really. There's some lensing distortion in astronomy. Um, but that triangle, the equilateral almost, is my proxy for the surface triangle because I'm acquainted with recovery. I got uh, fatal illness in remission. Um, kind of like living with a razor's edge. So I was noticing all of your affection for storytelling and stagecraft, and Re- Ian's recalling that the Ed Sullivan Theater had been built by Rogers and Hammerstein's, and that was some big money. They like big crowds. Uh, thing is that I'm acquainted with show business. My first stage presence was as Tiny Tim uh, in A Christmas Carol, Dickens. And of course, it's a pivotal small part and a great line. God bless that, everyone. Wow. And what a gift that might be. And I played Munchkins and Elves and a bunch of other things along the way. And little bits here and there, um, along with banking, bookkeeping, clerical, sales, oodles of other things. Life has multiple facets. Anyways, but just a little bit of a little person nod to show business. One was up for an Oscar once, and um, geez, he's got the same sort of dwarfism that I do. Spondyloepiphyseal dysplasia, and that included lifelong arthritis up until recently. Gosh, um, brain farts. You can look up his name. He was nominated for Ship of Fools, and he had a TV recurring role as Meagle Eagle Loveless. And that was running, Wild Wild West was running in when I was a young teenager. And I misheard Miguelito's name as Meagle Eagle. And what's a Meagle? Half a beagle, well, a step to the side of a beagle. I don't know. In other words, a lot of things, um, the labels don't fit. And anyways, I hadn't quite caught the connection because I didn't speak Spanish that his name was Michael. Um, but Miguel, anyway, he had a fall on the stairs and broke some bones, ended up in hospital, and it changed his life. And he ended up finding a gig at the fountain by the plaza. So, folks, gigs turn up, eh? And using a voice, communicating. Um, Geez, storytelling, so many threads. Ah, well, I watched the monologue that Ian did, Mountainous Inhumanity from Shakespeare. Um, I'm not a Shakespeare scholar. Uh, I am a fan, and I know a few of the plays, and I haven't appeared in any. I've got a few lines that I could roll off. Um, and geez, the sky of New Zealand. I mention that I live in Vancouver, in Canada, and so this might be. Speaking of roles and storytellings and all that, the white beard. It's a product of neuropathy. My hands are numb, and shaving takes dexterity. Uh, the beard's been growing a while, and the affection for it has been growing on me as well. So maybe there's some Santa Clausy gigs on the breeze that might look for a bit of improvisation of a Hobbitish. Ah, well, leprechauns and white elves too. Uh, Not of the Tolkien sort, but of the Santa sort. Stories intermingle and things can get confusing, eh? Um, so of course you guys got friend in recovery, maybe acquainted yourselves. Um, so life has constraints, and I've got my preferences, and um, a lot of my time is actually spent um, not in solitude, but in reflection with the universe, you know? Um, and there's a lot to say. So, can I pick up an effort to be an exerciser of eloquence and storytelling? I've got some other stories up. Jovan, you can check them out. And if this bit goes viral, maybe I'll go to the fan expo next weekend where the hobbits are showing up. Might be worth exploring and recording and sharing. So, uh, ah, that was a powerful statement on the Epstein files. Actually, your stamina with these issues and the continual stress of attempting to express. And I don't know what storms go on in the background. Storms. That's the other part. Winter break, let's call it. We're having a bit of a winter break. Uh, the Pensacola Bridge in Florida is closed because of snow. Florida, oh, will the crops survive the freezing? Because they're covering the crops in water so the ice will protect them from even colder light. And Charlotte, a blizzard and a tidal flood at the same time. And you didn't mention it. And Japan, some places with almost 5 meters of snow. The the tides in Vancouver hit 5 meters sometimes. That's over 16 feet, almost 2 story. Gee, um, Kamchatka, uh, Moscow, the biggest dump in 200 years. They threatened to freeze Europe and freeze Ukraine. They both have their own problems, but the threats come back double. Kant's categorical imperative, do as you would be done by, as you may be done by as you do, may be a bit of a poetic whimsy, but General Winter is biting Russia in the ass. Can you stand down the war? to save some lives, including her own. So many things to chat about, you know? Oh, Magneto demolishes New Jersey. And Stephen did mention that he's got a place there. You know what to say about Ukraine? Vancouver's got a sister city in Odessa and haven't stepped forward in their defense or expressed anything sensible. You ever notice silence can be shameful? Not speaking up when needed. And how does one accept a responsibility like that? You know, thing is, I'm disabled. Spent lots of time in hospital. Oodles of operation. I should probably have a better mic or speak up. Anyways, I faced some difficulties, the likes of which turn hospital time into a vacation. Regular meals, sounds of footsteps in hallway can be very comforting. Gee, so I'm thinking of composing a story that's Vancouver based with maybe a nod to some other stories. Emily in Paris, Jesus of Montreal, who had such an affection for Shakespeare's soliloquy. And Denmark and Greenland are in the news. To be or not to be? That is the question. Whether it is nobler in the mind. The honor between friends, recall. It's a book, a photo book about, among other things, the Canadian border. And the work up on Epstein, some of the sidebars were illuminating. I haven't delved into the amount available yet by any means, such an immensity, but might I mention one Epstein file? It's a picture taken by Jeffrey Epstein of Trump and three young women, females, 14 to 16 ish. And his fly is open, but nothing. You can't see the genitals. It's just an open fly. Um, but there's a cum stain on the front of his pants. You know, a squirt of pollen, semen, and the picture's taken by Epstein, and it's spoken of by Michael Wolff, I think, who is at the 92nd Street Y recently. Um, anyways, Trump busted a nut with youngsters in evidence. Does it pass provenance? And what does that mean? Um, I think two of the girls are topless. One of them's showing chest bumps. And all four are laughing. And Trump is, what is it? Sheepish, noticing that he's being recorded. And a streak of giggles and um not exactly gloating, but fuckery and getting away with it and gloating over getting away with it and testing little mints of fuckery is one of his favorite games. And rape is just a variation on a theme. If it isn't a pussy grab, then it's a terror, a threat, intimidation, fuckery. Um, and he appears to want to play the mobster metaphor for what it's worth, but may have found he's bitten off more than he can chew. And there's lots of mobster stories, and one has a horse head, and there's a horse head in Orion. Hmm. Ever have a disease where the cure requires honesty? What kind of an odd dose is that? Anyway, how does someone cultivating an addiction to honesty to deal with such a liar? And he doesn't notice that he's an alcoholic, himself sober, in a rageaholic, spewing contempt, derision, dominance, fury, and an infallible stupidity, among other things. It's a complex condition. What if it's rife, undiagnosed in the community? Hmm. So many other things to talk about, but your current craft around storytelling and the need for eloquence and that the necessity for connection to be found in some enchanted evening. That's important. It's a flavor of communication that needs not just cultivation, but protection. Oh, Stephen Colbert, I'd like to offer some sort of defense against the storm that faces you, but who knows if it might be an opportunity. But in the interim, you came to Vancouver for the Olympics 16 years ago. God, I've got a picture from the Van City building of the whole crowd. And and I like to suggest the possibility of maybe doing an apprenticeship with you, with a few shows over the next while, from Vancouver to the world. And a journeyman apprenticeship might be useful. Ian, I think I might have seen you on the seawall once walking, and me in my wheelchair. I didn't stop to say, "Hey, is that you?" Uh, English Bay could be beautiful. Um, you're talking about upcoming roles, um, Magneto and Gandalf, and of course, I've been thinking of you for another story, one that's quite necessary to be told, because to me it's extraordinary that it hasn't had an A-list run, you know? And that's The Trial and Death of Socrates by Plato. And it could be a film, but it's probably better as a series. And wow, it's like, where's the Republic come from? Where does communication, social ability, responsibility come from? Practice with others, with skills that work, not a pile of lies. And truth takes evidence, sometimes courage, and sometimes a daring. Why? Um, the Socrates story, probably better as a series, and the trial and death is kind of an intro to a classics in education, like Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, an education on Greek culture from a modern pragmatic perspective, and then into the classics and an education in, gee, Shakespeare knew Montaigne, and Montaigne knew friendship. He had a friend, and it was incredible. And his friend died, and he did a lot of things, but he kind of transferred the affection that he'd learned earlier to his reader. And he teaches, Montaigne teaches culture, friendship, symbiosis, and a Socratic breath. What do I know? you know? And I learned some friendship from Montaigne. So in response to a mountainous inhumanity, I suggest a Montaigne taste of friendship. And Montaigne, he had oodles of friends. One of his best was Plutarch. Plutarch's Lives, a gateway into Greece and Rome. Oodles of story. There's a story, actually, of one of Socrates' students, older adolescent, pre-warrior, had a bit of a tryst with our dear teacher, to the fury of his father, who sued. I don't know how the litigation turned out, but when you go beyond just the trial and death, there's oodles and noodles and noodles and noodles of stuff for building some storytelling. And the white guys with beards shibboleth. Most races, when they get older, get white beards. And just because some of the stories are old white guys with beards doesn't mean there ain't a whole lot of other things going on in the story too. And one character, Aspasia, it stands out to me, and a nickname or contraction of Gia. Um, anyways, I kind of think maybe there might be some space for Taylor Swift. And there's oodles and noodles and noodles of other talents around. Gosh, the people you know. Um, and how to get a talent in gear to be effective for storytelling that actually may generate some thriving instead of threat and murder. Anyways, I could chat around about oodles of other things. Um, just to wrap up a few thoughts. Oh, I encountered Tolkien 14 or 15 years old, grade 9 or 10 in high school. And I was in the hospital both those years. And I still passed both my grades. And was saturated by the realm Tolkien had crafted. Walked into a world, looked around and learned, observed. These characters in the storytelling is of some significance because people matter, even little people. And the things that need doing need to get done. And people got to do them. But how do you discern how to make oneself useful in a way that plays the thing? Can you make it fun, illuminating, musical, and you enjoy it? So, Stephen in particular. Now, to family tragedy, it takes many flavors and it can be devastating. And finding a story to escape into can be a marvelous thing. Lots of nooks and crannies. And models for creative living in the now that might be inspired by a character, as in God bless us, everyone. One of my other stories, I mentioned a comparison between Trump and L. Ron Hubbard of Scientology, with which I am also acquainted. And maybe to wrap in a note of levity, I guess, I was declared an enemy by that club and expelled. Gee. Thing is I was, along with Tolkien, sci-fi, Heinlein, Clark, Asimov, Bliss, oodles of others, Stapleton. Clark pointed me to Stapleton, a philosophy professor in Liverpool, a generation before the Beatles. And he crossed the Mersey to his home in Wales, and he'd recline on a hill and look at the sky. Might do a series of episodes of Stapleton. You know, there's loads of stories to tell. Anyway, Hobbitishnesss, the modesty of the little person to fit to be who they are. But to be who they are, a walk with a star. One of my other stories, well, I mentioned by way of introduction because most folks don't teach Hobbitish, is Frankie Starlight, which comes from a book called The Dork of Cork. And I use them like calling cards. Hey, might like it. But I could talk Canadian too. Canol Road, the Canadian Oil Road. There's a song lyric you can look up. Anyways, just want to say hey and pleasure getting acquainted, and maybe we can share a gig one of these days. Thank you kindly for your time and attention, and I wish you a cordial adieu. Ciao.